Hi everyone, and thank you for joining our call today. It's been a while, we've missed you very much. A lot of different things have been happening, so we'll go one by one on them about them. Maxime, I think you can just go ahead.
Yeah, hi everybody. Today I would like to update everyone and have a discussion on the topic of moving to get RGB released finally this year, maybe. No, not really, maybe just got it released. And I would like to start with the positive news that over the last week we have a quite productive discussion with other parties who were historically involved into the design, support, financial support, and contributions of RGB. Some of you maybe know that it was Bitfinex and Tether and Fulgur Ventures who financially supported the development before. With the support being moved to my company Pandora Core, and then some independent contributors, including different foundations and private individuals. And maybe you're aware that we historically had some misunderstandings between all the parties who are involved in RGB, which is quite normal because all of people have their own interests. And we continued the development of RGB under the auspices of the association. However, because I'm personally always open to have any collaboration based on the values, no matter how we can be different in other questions. And Bitfinex and Tether, they had shown an interest, and with Google Ventures as well, they have shown an interest to get the RGB finally out there and to use it even, maybe use it in their products if it will be successful and working. I'm glad to announce that on the right side of the slide, you see all these names that basically today we have on the call, we have people from all of these organizations, and we are united by the same goal of getting RGB released. And the goal that we share also is to find the way to get it done and get it stable after the release as well. So that's the positive news. Today we have Federico, who represents Phoenix and Tether, Giacomo, who also represents association and one of the main ideologies behind the RGB idea, initial idea and design, and also probably Oleg from Google Ventures. So I'm glad that we are all together once again.
Agreed on my part. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that I really appreciate how you aligned all the logos in the slide.
Yeah, thank you guys. Before moving to the main part, I would like to spend about 5 minutes on some not pleasant stuff which I have to say about. The first one is that we lost one of our partners and contributors quite recently, Sabina Shakhtatinskaya, who died on the 23rd of February this year after quite a long fight for her life. And actually, I have to confess that it was one of the reasons we didn't have death calls for a long time, because we were trying to save her life. Unfortunately, we had a medical accident. That's the official naming of the event. However, it's actually the medical mishandling. Actually, she was killed by the improper treatment in the Universitätsspital Zurich on the 15th of January, after which we had a very long fight with legals and medicine to assess her state and actually what had happened. Unfortunately, it all went bad, and at the end result that we were not able to save her. She was a game theory expert and a contributor to LNPBP projects, especially into RGB-based DeFi, digital identity, multiple lighting channel design, everything that is related to the design of game theory models. And she was also our business partner and financial director at the company that me and Olga are running, Pandora Core AG. So it's a hard loss, and I'm really sorry to tell that. Unfortunately, there is nothing that could be done regarding her. The other unpleasant event I would like to talk about was that on the next day after her death, we got the Russia starting the full-fledged war against Ukraine. Unfortunately, not only country, which is more bearable, but also against the Ukrainian peaceful residents. There is card listening in God going on that may end up classifying these actions as a genocide because there are clear signs of Russia going after the Ukrainian nationals and residents, not just against the country itself. And it was quite expected because this haven't started yesterday, it started in 2014. Small scale war, which were going on throughout these years at the borders. Anyway, we have decided that at the LNPBP Standards Association, we will have a sub-fund which will be subjected to support several matters. Primarily, it should support resilient internet connectivity throughout the country, because there is a high loss or high risk of losing their connectivity of internet connectivity by people living there. And we believe that without the internet connectivity these days, it's one of the main human rights, and people have to be able to communicate with others, to organize themselves locally and decentralizedly, to participate in the payment infrastructure based on Bitcoin, to communicate with each other and read news. So that is going against our values. So one of the first problems we would like to address with this fund is to maintain the resiliency of the internet connectivity in the war regions. Then the second is the penetration of decentralized informational infrastructure based on the Bitcoin and Lightning network, which is related to payments, messaging, and maybe in the future, maybe much long-standing future, something that will be an RGB-based legal procedures at the moment when basically in Ukraine we have no more any of the governmental registries, and basically the life in terms of civil relations had stopped, and maybe the decentralized LNPBP infrastructure can show itself as the force that is capable to maintain the civil operations if the state is actually absent. And of course, the least amount of funds will be directed towards the direct personal humanitarian support, primarily to people related to LNPBP and the decentralization technology, and of course their relatives. And we will be targeting helping them to relocate from the war zone to more safe regions, and maybe to European Union, and also of course providing some very targeted and small scale support, like with the food and medicaments under these auspices. I don't want to spend a lot of time on covering this topic because our call today is related to RGB, but because we got questions in the chat before the call, I would like to really briefly cover what the fund will be doing. And because many of you probably already donated, we got a lot of donations. Here, I do not expose the final amount of funds we operate today. It's less than 100,000, I would just say, and I would not expose the contributors until I will have their approvals. And it's quite a private matter, so we will probably do that later on a dedicated call. And once we will have the information from all the contributors, and we will see that there are no risks for them. But still, I would like to update you on how we plan to use these funds. And the first thing I would like to say that unlike many other funds, especially Western Western world funds. We have a direct connection, not just with Ukraine and Ukrainian people, because we are coming from there. We also have the direct connection to the people who manage currently the infrastructure. I wouldn't say government, because government has negative connotations, basically. But the bottom line idea that initially the Ukrainian government over the last years was quite decentralized one, fortunately, and we have a lot of friends working there. And several years ago, before moving to Switzerland, I was directly working with many officials in government at the top level, like in presidential office and others. These are all very young guys, which are very open to Bitcoin. Some of them even came from the Bitcoin background. They owned Bitcoin before they got to government. They had the yellow pill before the orange pill, before getting involved into any country level decision making. And I know them personally, and we have a good touch. So basically, the idea is that we have direct information from the very top officials, who are basically were the players who advised to structure this fund, and they're helping with both information and logistics throughout the country. So we are tightly working with them on establishing this infrastructure on non-official level, because even still that they are part of the government, they are working with the crypto, they have a crypto donations, they collected a lot of Bitcoins and USDTs, all of which they are using through the back door of their own government. Like it's really funny, but like president office and the top military, they just discarded the normal governmental workflows and doing that directly through the crypto sometimes. Which is, I think, a good thing and a good scene where we can test the actual capability of Bitcoin and LNPBP to do the parallel civilization. I wouldn't say that it should be a society, because it's not just a society, it's more like building everything without the centralized element on a more peer-to-peer basis, including the peer-to-peer technology. So with the, I also would like to explain that we got a lot of initiative people who were trying to contact us and provide help, and they are already providing help. And they all urging that we need to buy something and send something to Ukraine instantly. Unfortunately, it's not working like that, because the main problem today in Ukraine is not funding, is not money, is not the lack of equipment. The main problem is logistics. And while we have strong shelling going on, even in the regions where the internet connectivity is broken, there is not much things that we can do, because if we will buy something and send there, it will be lost. And there are no people to go into place and to distribute it. And the logistic in Ukraine is operating under 10% of the pre-war capacity. That's why we have defined three main phases of the help that we can provide to the Ukrainian infrastructure. They are all listed on the slide. Again, I'm trying to keep it as brief as possible. If there will be more questions, I really ask all of us to have a dedicated call regarding this matter, because I don't want to spend most of the time today on this matter. We need to talk about RGB. But basically, the current stage is the urgent help stage, which also includes a research phase, which will be researching the topics that will be helpful for the subsequent stages. And this stage will last until the ceasefire, which expectedly will be reached in a matter of 1 or 2 weeks from now. And during this stage, first of all, it's not that we were helping in that very much, but basically we were also coordinating on these matters, and we were able to get the Starlink connectivity throughout the Ukraine in the most critical regions. So Elon Musk, he enabled the Starlink on the Ukraine territory, and later he shipped sufficient amount of Starlink terminals. Also, we do the humanitarian personal attachment support. We will not use more than 10% of the funds that we have for that matter, because we reserve 90% of the funds for the main tasks and the main goals. And the rest that we can do is basically research on questions of radio, satellite, and mesh connectivity, research on connectivity loss, resilient payment infrastructure. Basically, the idea is that even if you lost internet connectivity, is there a way how we can still maintain a local infrastructure, intranet infrastructure in the communities, for instance, addressing at least payments and messaging. And we found that it is possible with a Lightning network. It's not possible with on-chain payments, but if you have Lightning channels pre-established before the breakage of the internet connectivity, it is quite safe to operate them for payment infrastructure. And also we will run software and hardware development for which may be used later for this Lightning payments and Lightning messaging. And right now we are gathering people who are interested in that. I would say straight away that I personally would not be coding for that project. I will still focus on RGB, which is my long-term goal. But we will look for people. I will be supervising this direction, at least the LNPBP association, and we will probably have a dedicated team working on the messaging and payment related to the Lightning network. Once we will have a ceasefire, we will have a reparative stage, where first of all we will focus on reparation of main optic cables. Again, I have the information about the state of the internet connectivity in the Ukraine, but I'm not able to share it with the publicity. And I have the information about the requirements to restore the internet connectivity and how the mobile network depended on the internet, unfortunately in Ukraine. But again, I wouldn't go into details on all of that, this because it can provide information to the enemy how to attack the infrastructure. And one of the main directions, other than just restoring the connectivity we had before the war time, is to create an EU fiber infrastructure. It's basically a high bandwidth, long range radio line of sight connectivity to duplicate the main internet optic backbones. So it will be a stage that we will run after the ceasefire, and the one that we will support directly. There are other sponsors available for sponsoring the reparation of main optic cables, because it will take millions of dollars, I assume. It's not the funds that we are able to provide. But fortunately, we have a collaboration with other funds, and also the government, they have this Bitcoin and crypto finance funds, which they can use urgently without all bureaucracy usually involved in such matters. And the final third stage will be adoption stage related to which is the most interesting to LNPBP association, the most interesting to Bitcoin people. So it's first of all deployment of personal mesh networks, radio, and satellite connectivity, all three of them. And that's why we need the research in the first stage, while we still don't have a ceasefire and way how we can deliver this hardware to the people who are under the war conditions at this moment. The second part is low energy, which is very important because the high probability there will be a strong power shortages in Ukraine, according to the intelligence that we have. The low energy Bitcoin and Lightning network hardware boxes and post terminals, such that the local merchants and local people will be able to operate their Lightning channels and do the payments. And of course, additional to that, we need a low energy, surveillance resistant and censorship resistant P2P messaging and payments that will operate on top of this hardware infrastructure. With the software, we are right now looking into building the first stage, which I already described. So that's a very brief overview of this part of the story, and now we can move to RGB roadmap. Just a brief pause. If there anybody have a very specific questions which I can address in several sentences, just not to spend much of time, I will be willing to answer right now, or otherwise let's have a separate call if there will be more questions that I can cover at this moment. Olga, do you have anybody wants to say something?
So far, no, guys. 1, 2, 3. Any questions?
Okay, I will move forward with RGB now.
Yeah.
The RGB roadmap. The main question we will try to address on the call today is how we can get to the RGB release. And we already have spent some time last week together with Federico and Giacomo assessing the current state of RGB and finding the most direct way how we can get working it as soon as possible, moving everything that is not required to get RGB released to the later stages, such that we can have a protocol first to enable other developers work on their solutions on top of the protocol, being quite sure that the protocol wouldn't be modified unless there will be some severe bugs discovered. And I also have to confess that, unfortunately, the January and February were lost in terms of my work on the RGB because of the Sabina situation, war in Ukraine. I was continuing working on certain aspects of RGB, including the taproot implementation in the Bitcoin and bringing it back towards the RGB, because RGB depends on that implementation. I will say a few words about that a bit later. And also doing the PSBT RGB related standard proposal for BAP standard, but nothing more than that. And it's much less that I was doing before. But anyway, now I'm back to the full-time RGB development, and I think that it will go back to the same speed that it was before the new year. So saying about the roadmap, a year ago, in May 2021, well, not exactly a year ago, but almost a year ago, in May 2021, we had a first release of RGB, which we may call a RGB public preview. And basically it was the RGB node version 0.4, which was the consumer-facing product. Also, there were the consumer-facing products by Pandora Core, which allowed an end user to experience what is to work with RGB. It was the first RGB-enabled wallet called MyCitadel, and wallet integration kit Citadel runtime, which may be used by independent wallet developers to get RGB into their wallets. It was a tool for asset issuers called Bitcoin Pro, and it was asset catalog and explorer in the internet called RGBX.io. And that public preview had demonstrated us that there are several significant RGB issues which may challenge the goals that we had with RGB and the adoption of RGB protocol. And these issues were related to three main topics. The first one, that RGB lacked the Turing complete scripting, and without that, it wouldn't be possible to design DeFi systems matching the capabilities of other networks, blockchain-based networks like Ethereum and the rest. We know that these promises are failed. Basically, it's a sort of the DeFi that exists today is not a decentralized DeFi. I wouldn't spend much time on that. If somebody has any doubts on that, we can have a separate discussion. But basically, that's what we are believing, that the DeFi today is just same centralized registry-based system. It's just with a different software, not yet governmental running. So, but if RGB will not provide a base for DeFi over Bitcoin, well, it will fail a certain part of its mission, because there will be no tool in the world. We have money, we have Bitcoin, but why we need RGB? To do tokens and NFTs and have another wave of scam on top of it? Of course, we will have it, but what's the final purpose? And for me, as a main developer behind the RGB, the final purpose is to unlock the decentralized finance world. So we have money, but we need the real economy is not just made of money. It's made of different forms of contracts, futures, shares, and other forms, options, and they are all important for the decentralized economy. And without fulfilling the full scale of, let's say, DeFi, or how we call it, BFI, Bitcoin finance, the RGB promise wouldn't be fulfilled. And without the Turing complete scripting, unfortunately, we investigated that it's impossible to do. That's why we did a stuff that is called Alluvium, the virtual machine for RGB. We were waiting for simplicity, but last May we assessed the probability of getting simplicity working in the next year, and it was low, so we decided to do our own virtual machine, which now I can say was the right choice because we don't still have a simplicity working, but we have already Alluvium done. And that was the first problem that we discovered and why we haven't had next RGB release yet. The second is the Taproot support. And the Taproot wasn't activated in the May 2021. It is activated now, but while RGB is mostly done with the Taproot, it's Taproot enabled from the day one, the actual stack of the libraries we are using in the RGB, which is Rust-based libraries, haven't yet completed the Taproot support. And actually, I invested even more time in Taproot support than even in Alluvium. We were contributing, the association and myself were contributing to the Rust implementation in Rust Bitcoin of Taproot over the half of year, like the whole past year, but mostly during the last half of the year. And it's done now, and we have a release candidate in Rust Bitcoin. Unfortunately, we have the second layer, which is Miniscript implementation of Taproot, which is also a dependency of RGB, and that is being completed by Blockstream these days. And we are pending the release of Taproot in the Miniscript in the next weeks. So that's another factor that prevents us from having RGB release. And the final thing is that when we released this Citadel wallet, my Citadel wallet, we discovered that with the client-side validation, when you do an RGB transfer or when you even issue RGB asset, you need to get other people to know about that. So when you issue RGB asset, you have to deliver it to other wallets. And when you do a transfer, you have to send the client-side validated data somehow to the recipient. And in the version that we had of RGB and MyCitadel, you do that manually. You send it over Telegram or email or whatever other channel, and it was not usable. It just wasn't usable. And we were looking for finding a more efficient and user-friendly way of distributing that information. So that's why we have spent the last year, since the May 2021, well, less than 1 year, but still quite a lot of time, to do the following. So in the LNPBP Standards Association, we did the Alluvium, the virtual machine for scripting with RGB. We did a Taproot implementation of Rust Bitcoin, which I already described on the previous slide. Also, we worked on the wallet-specific updates required for proper RGB functioning, which we were lacking still, like additions to partial PSBT, partially signed Bitcoin transaction format, both in terms of LNPBP and BIP standards, improvements to the derivation path such that RGB assets will not be mixed with the Bitcoin and not be occasionally lost. And also the last 3 months, October, November, December, I was heavily involved into doing the Lightning implementation because the original idea was that we will release the RGB on-chain and Lightning part together. And we had quite a good progress in that because we've got the LNP node interoperable with the Lightning network, which I was demonstrating before the new year. And we also designed a new Bifrost protocol, which is a subset of Lightning network, and which enables channels with RGB assets. But this Bifrost protocol is not yet implemented. It is just designed. So that's why later when we will be discussing the specific roadmap, I will say a few words about how we plan to structure the timeline of doing the RGB Lightning part. Additionally to the work that was done through the last year by the association. At Pandora company, we did a compiler and assembler language for Aluminum, which enables to write. Still, it's very low level, but at least it's some tool to write the code for custom RGB contracts. And we were working on designing algorithmic stablecoin using RGB, Bfrost on top of Lightning Network and DeFi. And we were also looking to make sure that other types of DeFi products, of BFI products, are possible with RGB. And we know that others were also working, playing with RGB, and at least we know about the NFT wallet by DIBA, who are also participating in the call today. So now let's go into the part that is related to how we can get RGB released with the position from the position that we are today. But I would like to ask you for a 2-minute break because I need to drink something. Otherwise, I can't speak anymore. So just give me 1 second.
Sure. Guys, if you maybe have any questions, you could drop them in the chat. And either now or maybe after the presentation is done, I can just read them out loud and answer whatever you have.
While Maxim drinks, not a question, but just a very brief comment. The part about algorithmic stablecoin is not just about algorithmic fiat synthesis, let's say, like in others experiments, but also about basically creating algorithmic Bitcoin stable RGB tokens, which is especially something that I find very interesting long term. I just like Maxim, I'm personally not really interested in tokens, even if I think that RGB would be the best way to do collectibles, unlike other kind of global consensus-based systems like Omni or ES20. I think RGB would be way cooler, and that's why I hope that DIBA work was great. But for me, the long-term application for RGB is especially alternative strategy for Bitcoin privacy and scalability. So when you hear about algorithmic stability, algorithmic pegging, don't just imagine fiat stuff like Tether or other similar approaches, but also possibly a future Bitcoin pegged RGB token, which would basically be client-side validation, privacy, and scalability for Bitcoin itself, which would be very cool.
So regarding this, there is already some written ideas on how to do algorithmic stablecoins on RGB, because I guess it would be quite different.
They are not written. They are ideas which we discussed mostly. Me and Giacomo, and of course we were discussing it with Olga and Sabina inside our company. They are not yet written. It were more like making sure that the design of RGB that we have today will not block us from doing stuff like that.
Okay, maybe not now, but in another session I will be interested to understand this better.
Yeah, we had actually a call in the autumn which we devoted to the BFI, the DeFi on top of RGB and Bitcoin and Lightning Network, where we covered many different aspects, like how would it be possible to do liquidity pools, to do like very complex smart contracts with RGB. And we had also several people who had experience in designing such stuff. For instance, Alex Kravets, who actually was one of the people who did a donation to LNPBP Foundation, thankfully for which we are running all of that stuff, although there were private persons. So there is a recording about of this call, which will be also useful. And I think we should have soon a dedicated call updating the state of all these developments that we had.
Okay, I will look into the recording then.
Yeah, they'll probably ask Olga to find the specific recording, or I will try to find it myself.
Yeah, I will. Dark also asks, where can we find infos about the work done in algorithmical stablecoin?
Well, again, it's not, there is no nothing in code or nothing written. It's more like our internal discussions with different people. For instance, we were meeting Giacomo finally after a long delay when we haven't seen each other due to COVID in the January, and I presented him with all the ideas that we had. But it's all in words. It's not recorded anywhere, unfortunately, yet. Because first of all, it's a huge amount of work that has to be done, and we are focusing on releasing RGB first, and then moving to these topics.
Cool. And the second question is, since hash rate follows price, could hash rate or difficulty be used to peg a stablecoin?
Giacomo had some ideas about that, I think.
Yeah, probably not the best moment to discuss it, but in general, I mean, introspections like difficulty could be used. There are a few ideas that could work. It's not trivial, especially. I think it's very difficult to make it not gameable, not trivially gameable by a minor majority. But we can. I think we can maybe dedicate a future call to these ideas. But I will get back to actual RGB release topics.
Fair enough.
Sorry, I started the off topic actually. Sorry, but I was just buying Maxim some time to drink.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll talk about these topics a bit later, probably.
Yeah, I think
Maxim,
there is a big interest to DeFi and other stuff, and we clearly need a dedicated discussion about that. But first, we need to get the RGB released after 3 years of development. Well, actually, more than 3. It's only me who been involved 3 years, but probably more than 4 years or 5 years for now.
Exactly. So let's go back on track if you're ready.
So what prevents RGB from being released today? Well, there are two main prerequisites. The first one is the taproot, and we're mostly there. It is activated on chain. It is implemented in Rust Bitcoin. We have a version of Rust Bitcoin library released with the taproot support, and we even have an Electrum version released with the Bitcoins with the taproot support. The final thing that we are lacking is a full miniscript support of the taproot, because miniscript is used inside the RGB to parse the commitments, pay to contract commitments in the script keys. And it's already at least 2 months after we, like in the beginning of January, we got the Rust Bitcoin release with the taproot support. And the Blockstream guys are working on the miniscript part. It was implemented before the Rust Bitcoin release, but still, when the Rust Bitcoin was released, there is a lot of stuff that has to be changed, and it's still not there. So we are waiting for the Rust manuscript release. I believe that there is not a lot of what we can do regarding that, how we can help, because it's basically Andrew Paelstra and the other Blockstream guys who are working on that, and I'm not. I can't even review their PRs, because these PRs are like many thousand lines of Rust code, and I just didn't have the time, and probably nobody without big integration into Blockstream will be able to contribute something to that part. So it's more like we are waiting, but we knew that Blockstream and Andrew Paelstra, they are very focused on getting it done. So hopefully it will take several more weeks at most, such that when we will complete with the other stuff, it will be there. And there is literally, we don't need to change a lot in the RGB itself. We just need to make sure that it compiles with the new library versions with all the API changes. So it's more like routine work. And the second requirement is Alluvium, which is also done. And I'm quite happy that we have with LNPBP Association a new contributor who will be working full-time from Japan, who will be working full-time on the Alluvium. Not will be, he is already working on Alluvium for 3 months right now. And now, starting from March, he will be working full-time. And he helps to finalize the whole set of the instructions that this virtual machine operates, and he was also reviewing what I have written before, doing test coverage, discovering bugs and everything like that. And the only thing that really remains to get it working in RGB, because Alluvium was mostly complete by the end of the summer. The last parts which were not fully done were related to floating point operations with some weird floating point related numeric types, which is not really used by the smart contracts. But anyway, the only thing that is left is to fully integrate Alluvium into RGB code, because RGB code was written before the Alluvium, and now we need to replace all the embedded procedures, especially for the fungible tokens with the Alluvium code, which is not a lot of work. So we are talking about days of work, but it's just the last two things that are prerequisites to RGB on-chain part of the protocol release. So it can be achieved quite soon. However, I have to notice that it's not like that if we will have RGB protocol released, it's the next day that wallet developers and smart contract developers will be able to write their own beautiful wallets and new types of smart contracts like in Ethereum. No, unfortunately, it's not, because RGB protocol on-chain part of it is just about the protocol itself. So we are sure that it will not binary change in the future, and that we can start working on the integration of RGB into wallets, exchanges, and developing the kits for smart contract developers. Unfortunately, we had a negative experience with the false start about a year ago, or more than a year ago, when actually, even unfortunately, it was one of the reasons why we didn't, why we had a hard time with the Bitfinex and other devs, is that they were trying to integrate RGB, which wasn't ready, into the software that they have, and they spent some time of their developers to do the integration while the RGB protocol was constantly changing and the API was changing. I will be talking more about the integration today a bit later, but the bottom line idea is that we have to finalize the protocol first, and then it will be the time when the proper integration stuff can be done. And it's very important to differentiate the integration of RGB into the wallet software or into exchange soft backend, and the creation of new RGB-based smart contract by smart contract developers. These are two completely unrelated, separated topics, and it's very important to differentiate. So to get the RGB working in the wallet, it's one question. To get somebody writing a very interesting new type of smart contract, not just RGB20 fungible token, but some kind of algorithmical stable coin with a NFT or whatever, these are different independent questions, and they have to be developed separately. So for wallet developers and exchanges to integrate RGB, we need to provide an integration kit. And this integration kit, additionally to have the RGB protocol stabilized, should have two other things. The first is it should have the completion of PSBT extensions related to client-side validation, pay-to-contract commitments, and the rest of stuff, because it wouldn't be able to do it properly with existing infrastructure. And we expect that most of the modern wallets and exchanges, they already operate PSBTs. So the best way forward to get RGB working with them is to just standardize the PSBT support of RGB and have everything done in the same way by multiple vendors and developers. And the second prerequisite for the wallet developers and the exchange developers is the completion of strict encoding API. What it is? Well, the idea is that everything in RGB, in the client-side validation with a single use seals and all that stuff that we were discussing for 3 years, is done with a very specific binary encoding of data. We call this encoding strict encoding. This encoding was created basing on the ideas of Peter Todd, and it was reviewed by him. And it's very different from everything else, all other types of binary encoding that is out there. It is formally verifiable at the end of the day. It is very bound by the amount of resources it uses. It is bound by the space it occupies. It basically fulfills the requirements for the environment we are running client-side validation in. But today, we have the libraries for strict encoding written only in Rust. And to integrate anything related to RGB, basically we need to write more libraries in other languages like JavaScript, Python, Java, C, and so on and so forth for the strict encoding. And it also will be required for efficient exchange integration. I will be addressing that specific matter a little bit later. So with having RGB protocol finalized, PSBT extensions and strict encoding libraries, we will be able to do the wallet integration and exchange integration kits. And when we will talk more about developing new smart contracts, this is even more distant matter. And this matter, of course, will also require the RGB protocol finalization. It is not dependent on the wallet integration at all, but it also will have a prerequisite of doing the proper language and compiler to write the smart contracts. Because today we have an assembly language, ALU-ASM, so-called, and the compiler for that. But I doubt that there will be a lot of coders who will be able to code the things in the assembly language. So we need some high-level language, and we have some ideas, concepts of that, and design for that language called Contractum. But again, we have to develop the Contractum compiler and do the toolchain things for that. But fortunately, here we are not time restricted that much, because basically when we have RGB released, somebody can develop their own language independently from us, compiling into the Alluvium bytecode. We haven't touched yet the Lightning part, so it was all about on-chain part, and now I would like to address the Lightning part. With the Lightning part, again, we need to have RGB protocol on-chain part done. And the RGB in Lightning will work on top of specific Lightning extension, which we call Bifrost. We had a big presentation about Bifrost before the end of the last year, and actually we had at least half of the year discussions how we should structure the RGB supported Lightning Network, through which we came to the idea of this separate protocol, which is a part of LNP Lightning Network protocol family, but is an upgraded version of existing Bolt-based Lightning Network. And this Bifrost protocol, as a Lightning Network itself, consists of two main parts. The first is a P2P messaging, how the nodes connecting to each other, Lightning nodes connecting to each other, exchange the information. And this information exchange will also include the exchange of information which is not related directly to the Lightning payments. You know that there is a lot of attempts to build, for instance, a messenger on top of Lightning Network, or a social network on top of Lightning Network. And it is really hard to do this today, because Lightning Network P2P messaging is dedicated for the payment infrastructure. It is based on onion packet. It requires certain routing. It has traffic problems because of that, consumption problems. The network capacity consumption problems. And that's why in Bifrost, in the original design, we have tried to address these problems, and we have a direct P2P messaging, not requiring the onion routing and the problems that we had in the Lightning Network. And this messaging is a part of the protocol we call Storm, Storage and Messaging Protocol, which we started designing at least 3 years ago. And this messaging will be used. So you see the two arrows coming from Bifrost P2P and Storm and from RGB protocol. So this messaging will be used to deliver the RGB consignments about the RGB payment and distribute the information about assets issued on RGB. So this will specifically address the issue of distributing newly created assets in the network in a decentralized way, and also of having payments between two wallets without the need to send some data manual, the client-side validated data manual. And we plan to do the Bifrost P2P messaging and Storm part, which is quite a small one, before the rest of the Lightning Network sort of protocol support. And again, it's really people, when they think about RGB and Lightning Network, they think only about the RGB payments through the Lightning Network. But what I'm talking right now is a different thing. It's RGB on-chain payments with the client-side validated information delivered through the Lightning Network. So the Lightning Network acts here not as a Lightning channels, but as an decentralized information delivery system, information delivery system. So, and that is allowed with this Bifrost P2P and Storm thing, which we will do first. After that, what we will do is the Bifrost channels, which are provide an upgraded way for Lightning channels to use RGB assets in them. And not only RGB assets, the Bifrost channel is a generalized Lightning channel that can have arbitrary structure. These channels can be a channel factories. These channels can have RGB assets. They can run, for instance, sub-channels with discrete log contracts, DLC contracts, or DLC log contracts combined with RGB contracts. And this will be a really crucial part of the B5, of the Bitcoin DeFi. And bringing this together, at the end of the day, we'll get this RGB-enabled Lightning Network channels, which are also not just RGB-enabled, but DeFi-enabled Lightning channels, which can be multi-peer channel factories, which can handle channel splits, liquidity pools, DLCs, and basically this will be part of the infrastructure which is required to run things like algorithmical stablecoins. So there is a lot of stuff, as you see. And what I'm trying to discuss today is the proposed structure for the release roadmap of these different parts, such that we can have something critical done as soon as possible with adding more features over the time. Because we can't wait another year, 2, 3 for getting all of this complexity done. And this slide tried to summarize all these parts together and bring them into a roadmap. So from top to bottom, you have the timeline. So time goes from top to bottom. And we have 4 release stages here. I will be switching between the text version and the graphical version. So the first release stage, which we would like to have this year, should be an RGB protocol release, which is realistically to get by May 2024. I think that it can be done in April, but I put May just because I know that it always takes more time than you expect. And this is the top part of the slide, where you have the RGB protocol on chain with the 2 prerequisites, Taproot and Alluvium, the top part above the dashed line. And with that, we will unlock the rest of the story, such that people will be able to start working on trying to use the RGB RGB protocol in their products. Because the risk that we have today, which we need to address, is the fact that people anyway are starting playing with RGB and integrating RGB into what they do. And sometimes we don't even know about that. And what they do is using the previous version of RGB, which is not Taproot enabled, which doesn't have this Alluvium stuff. And we will end up with having multiple protocols which are incompatible and so on and so forth. So we will decide that after certain discussion, there were proposal by Federico, and actually I agreed on that it will be really important to get RGB protocol stabilized first. And while my goal before the new year was to get all parts released together, RGB on chain and RGB Lightning, I have to say that the main challenge which I had is solved. It was a challenge that if I will do Lightning after the main chain on-chain release of RGB protocol, there might be certain things that has to be changed in RGB itself to get it working online. Because throughout the several months before the new year, I went deeply into the Bifrost design with RGB. Now I think that I'm quite sure that everything that has to be changed in the RGB protocol, we already know, and it's already there or planned to get into the RGB protocol, so we can have the RGB protocol released by the May 2022. And after that, we can work in parallel on two different tasks. The first task is get the PSBT extensions, strict encoding API, and RGB integration kits for wallets and exchanges. And I assume that here, probably the contributions by external parties will be most welcome, because this part doesn't require a deep understanding of all internals of RGB itself or Lightning Network or other stuff that is really hard to find the developer that is comfortable with all of three, including the Rust language itself. So this part will be more community driven. And on the other hand, in parallel, I will be focused on doing the Bifrost P2P part, such that we can unlock the transfer of the RGB assets via the Lightning Network, via this Bifrost protocol, and enable a next level of usability for the wallets and exchanges.
Maxim, sorry for interrupting. Mr. Hunter missed the part. Which was the part which was more community driven?
It was the part related to the wallet integration kit, related to PSBT, partially signed Bitcoin transaction extensions, and strict encoding APIs, which are required to get RGB node and other parts of RGB related software working inside the software in other languages, not Rust language. I will be addressing this specific part a bit later.
While we're still on this, do you have any possibility to maybe use a pen or something, like to, if you are showing something, if you're talking about some specific part of this of the screen of the slide, do you have a pen or something that would?
Let me try.
It's more interactive.
I'm doing the presentation from the iPad, so.
Yeah.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So
this is circle it and then just delete it or something. But,
this is the part, the first part that can be done in parallel, related to RGB integration into wallets and exchanges, of course, which has these two prerequisites of PSBT extensions and strict encoding API. And this is the part which I was describing here. Just move to that part.
So regarding this, you think it's possible to start working on this before the taproot and algorithm part are finished?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think that actually here it's below the first line, like below here, but it can be moved here in parallel because it's not a prerequisite to get RGB protocol on chain. It may continue after the release of RGB protocol on chain, but it can start before RGB protocol on chain. And basically, it's the part of the story that we can work now.
Okay, amazing. So regarding the taproot part, maybe we already discussed it, but I don't remember. Like, why it would be a problem to have a first release without taproot integrated and then add the taproot later on? Would it break compatibility? Or?
No, it's not like a problem. It's more like, unfortunately, taproot changed a lot of API in Rust Bitcoin and Bitcoin itself, unrelated to taproot itself. So basically, the whole Rust Bitcoin got refactored to support Taproot, even in the parts which are not Taproot related. And when you move from the pre-Taproot version to Taproot, everything breaks, literally. And if you release a pre-Taproot version of RGB, and then you do a Taproot version of RGB, it wouldn't be just that in one the Taproot is not working and then the other it is working. It will be a completely different API for RGB itself, the reintegration of everything once again, and kind of huge headache. And also it's really hard to do because right now I was trying to manage two branches, which is Taproot enabled and not Taproot enabled in several repositories. And I will be showing later how many dependencies we have for RGB, and it became unmanageable very soon.
Maxim, is that because the commitment scheme that we use for pay-to contract is
No.
specifically? No, it's not for that.
No, it's because like Taproot just didn't change. It sounds like Taproot just adds a new witness version script output, but in reality it modifies the structure of public keys, the structure of private keys. Taproot has changed everything. I think it's the biggest update to Bitcoin itself over all the years. It's not just about a new type of script pub key outputs. It's also about a new type of public keys. It's also about new type of private keys. It's also about new type of signatures. It's also about new type of Bitcoin script, which is incompatible with the rest of Bitcoin script. It's also about a structuring of Bitcoin script, which becomes not linear, but tree-like. It's also about creating SIG hashes, new types of SIG hashes, which are not compatible to the existing SIG hashes. Like it changed every part of Bitcoin code. There is no part of Bitcoin code library which was not affected by Taproot. And literally, it's two different Rust Bitcoin libraries, before Taproot and after Taproot, with a completely different APIs.
Thanks, I had no idea.
The amount of change is so dramatical. For instance, for Rust miniscript, which were literally Taproot supported for almost a year now, when the new Rust Bitcoin version was released, they are struggling for 2 months to get it working with the new Rust Bitcoin version. And the same applies to RGB. Basically, Taproot doesn't change something in RGB itself, but the amount of API changes in the code that is used by RGB, the Rust Bitcoin code, the normal Bitcoin code, everything has changed. Like the API to do signature has changed. The API to you work with the public key has changed. So before you had a public key which can be uncompressed or compressed just. Now we have an X-only public key which is valid in context of certain scripts, which like absolute breakage of whole the logic. And support of Taproot in RGB is not about the support of Taproot in terms of the standard and design of the protocol. It's about support in terms of code, because the code stops working with the new version of Rust Bitcoin because the amount of parameters, the function names, everything has changed in the Rust Bitcoin.
So before you were mentioning that this is not something that it's about us, but it's about other people completing the work. So we have an idea on their timeline when it's going to be ready.
Like from what there are two things, like how they answer this question by themselves and what is my best estimate from my experience. How they answer this question by themselves is pretty much like I am answering the question about when RGB will be ready. It's always 2 weeks from now. Like, sorry, but that's the reality, because developers underestimate the complexity of the topic. So they were saying that it should be ready just a week after the Rust Bitcoin release, but we are 2 months after that week, and it's still not there. And they're saying that it's almost done. So my estimation that I really hope that we will have that before the May 2022. Maybe we should have it through the April 2022. If not, in the April 2024, in the mid of April 2022, we should have a dedicated call and take decision what to do. Because like today we have a version of all RGB libraries, which are both taproot based and non-taproot based. It's more just a question of which of the branches we should use to do the final release.
Okay, regarding Alup, which one of those would be the real bottleneck in your opinion, Taproot or Alup?
No. Algorithm is completely dependent to us, and I don't see any problems there. It's more like I have decided to switch my work from Lightning and Bifrost part to complete RGB on chain, so I will focus on this part, and it will be a matter of days or week or something like that.
Ah, okay, amazing. So let's say that as soon as this Taproot work is finished, we can consider RGB part as completed.
Yes.
The on-chain part as completed.
Yeah, I think that Taproot is the main blocking part of the story.
Okay.
I also have
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go on.
No, so my question is, based on my understanding, it's basically we should wait until the release. Hopefully it will be in May or maybe earlier. In what way we can help you or help the team in order to test and help and accelerate the activities?
It will be on the slides later. I have very detailed slides on that topic in just several slides. Yeah. So the two parts which will be developed in parallel on the stage 2 will be the wallet integration kit, and the second part is just this story, which I wouldn't say not completely related to the wallet, because it adds to the user experience. Because without this part, the left part, I will draw it another color. Without this blue part, the wallet user experience will be poor, like we had with the MyCitadel last year, because people need to share a long bulk of files or binary strings between themselves to do an RGB asset transfer, and the experience is really bad. So the blue part actually addresses that story. So it's not required and not critical to get RGB working. It will be working without that, but it will be required to have a proper user experience. So basically those who would like to have a good user experience wallets will have this prerequisite.
I mean, Maxim, good UX or absence of central point of failure, because I guess some of those things could be provisionally delivered with some level of temporary centralization, like some Lightning wallets using a centralized LSP or something like that.
Yeah.
But to have a proper decentralized version, yeah.
Yeah, probably more about the centralized version. Basically, the wallets should to redo this work by themselves with a certain centralized solution, which will take their time, resources, or they cannot do that, and they will have a worse user experience without that. Giacomo, is it clear? Or?
Yes, absolutely clear.
So this is the second stage, which I would like to have done by the August 2022. It's more of a vague deadline, because I wouldn't say that there is a lot that has to be done on the blue part, which I will be focusing on. It's more like I spent previous 2 days doing it, and I've done like 25% of it already. So I think it will be ready earlier. It's more like having this part, which I will be just supervising and not directly writing, to be done. Well, I will be working on this thing, PSBT extensions, but the rest I will be just supervising, to be done in more ways such that different wallet developers can coordinate and use the same integration kit to embed into their wallets. That's why it's like August 22. And after that, we will have the third part, which is, for me, is most interesting actually. This one is the RGB added to Lightning Network into the channels for off-chain payments. This is not that much interesting for all of people because, for instance, with an NFT, you don't need it. Like it can't help to do NFT at all. It's just for fungible assets or for future DeFi stuff.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting, but I think we will need to address the NFT on Lightning topic once more. Maybe now, but I think it would be off topic a bit. Maybe later, but there are a lot of people that have been asking like how they have this expectation that NFTs in RGB can be used over Lightning.
Yeah,
And
I can try to do that super fast. Basically, you cannot do routing if you have one instance of an object. If an object is in the channel between me and Maxim, the same non-fungible object cannot be in the channel between Maxim and Olga. So I cannot send this object to Olga via Lightning because I cannot do routing. What we could do is channels sending back and forth between the peers the one single non-fungible token, but not route. And since Lightning without routing is possible, but more niche as a use case, is less generalized. So NFT cannot be routed, so they cannot be meaningfully transmitted through Lightning right now. There could be some use case in which you create a channel with an NFT versus your NFT provider or a guard gallery or something, and you go back and forth. But that's the only use we can have because intrinsically NFTs cannot be routed. What we could have in the future with L2 and stuff like that is Lightning channels that are so huge, like multi-party Lightning channels that are so huge that you can put the same NFT in shared on-chain possession between among 100 people, and there you can have a more significant off-chain transaction for NFTs. But until the channels are bilateral, by definition, you cannot route a non-fungible token.
Yeah, absolutely correct. So
thank you.
That's the answer. I will make it more sweety. I will add some sugar to it. So the sugar is basically that if you are a game developer doing some NFT, you will probably have a multi-peer channel with a Bifrost, which is possible today, which will be possible only with a Bifrost in the nearest future, hopefully, which may be possible with a Bifrost in the nearest future. And in that multi-peer channel, you can really do a transfer of that NFT between peers, literally off-chain, not relying on on-chain fees and not requiring the on-chain transaction, which is what probably most of the NFT users are looking after. And you can even have a channels where you have not N of N, but N of M multisig, so that you don't need even all of the players to be online. So these are matters which are addressable matters with the Bifrost. That's why we are doing Bifrost protocol. And the second thing, which will take years, at least from today, and we are not yet quite sure that it is possible, but there is a potential solution that using adapter signatures and Schnorr signatures, you can do a transfer of a non-fungible item, including NFT, but it also may be some sort of form of digital rights, through the Lightning routed network, which is extremely complex. It's a very early topic of investigation. No guarantees that it is even possible. We have just a very preliminary ideas about that, and it certainly will take years how that can be done. But the LNPBP Association have a desire to look into this topic more once RGB is released, because this is huge, not because of NFT, of course, nobody cares about them, but it's about the ability to route the certain forms of digital rights without on-chain transactions.
Perfect.
So just sugar to what Giacomo said is always being very precise and pessimistic. realistic.
Yeah, and you did it very technical, very complicated to understand at some point. So yeah, you have your own sort of sugar.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Maybe one day somebody who will live those days could do something with that. Okay, and the last part of the story, which I will agree, is that when we have all of that done, we will have some time to dedicate to do the contraction language to do the kits for developers of RGB smart contracts. But if somebody needs that, not in the future, but today, you can start working on them independently from us. It's just that we wouldn't be able to pay a sufficient amount of time to support your efforts, and you will be in that territory by yourself. Okay. So these are release batches, which I just described. And now let's get to the current action points, answering the question how I can contribute, which we just had. There are two main blocks where people can contribute. The first block is the very complex one, which is RGB protocol itself, and it is the most urgent one. The second block is the RGB integration into the wallets, and it's less complex one. And I will start with this less complex block. So we need to provide different developers a way how to integrate RGB in multiple languages. The primary things we need to work on is C and WASM. And both of these require knowledge of Rust, because C and WASM integration is in fact done in Rust. So probably it only those of you who has a very strong Rust experience and probably a C background will be able to contribute to that. The rest is just don't please try, because like I really don't want to say that, but the problem then when somebody who doesn't know Rust tries to do a pull request into Rust repository working at the system level with the client-side validation, single UCLs or something like that, or C, FFI, basically we need to spend our time explaining how the Rust code should be written, and it doesn't help, it just actually postpones the release of RGB, because instead of doing RGB, we are spending much more time on reviewing that kind of pull request. So please estimate your knowledge level by yourself objectively. And if you see that you don't do Rust, do not know Rust, just go into the direction where the Rust knowledge is not required. And these directions, yeah.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. I think here we can, or someone that is listening right now can create a meme. Like you cannot just take, like not knowing Rust, create a pull request into the Rust repositories of the LNPBP Standards Association. Please, someone, if you can do a meme like that, do it. It will be very helpful.
Well, it's like I really appreciate a lot of help that we are getting for Ukrainian community during the war. But there is a very clear distinguishment between people who have been into war under the shelling, for instance, and those who are trying to contemplate how they can help not being in the war. And the difference is that when there is a shelling or fight is going on, you can just buy something, deliver directly to people who are in there and help them. It's not working like that. It's like all about logistics and being able to do something in place where people are just literally dying. And the same, of course, not the same, but like the analogy is it still stands for the Rust development. The Rust takes a huge amount of experience to do something meaningful in it. It's a complex language, and when you just try to do a pull request like changing several commas in the doc comments, well, yes, it's still pull request and contribution, but doesn't help to move towards RGB release. It instead takes the time of people who are working on the real Rust code, moving towards the Rust to RGB release, to review your request, to answer, to say that, well, it's not exactly like that, even that you're proving the doc comments, you still change some part of the code which shouldn't be changed. So please, if you'd like to help, just focus on the part of the story that you have experience with. And these are parts like if you have experience with a JavaScript or Java or Kotlin, which is a language on top of Java Virtual Machine, Dart, which may be useful for the cross-platform applications written in Flutter, Python or Swift, your efforts will be more helpful in the areas of doing the integration for the RGB. And what are these integrations? So let me try to explain what are these integrations. So everything we developed and LNPBP association and Pandora core is done with microservice architecture. Everything is a small block of logic that run independently of other blocks of logic that helps to separate the concerns, the bugs, make the system more robust, more scalable, more interoperable, more portable. And these small logic modules are connected to each other through an event-driven asynchronous API using zero message queue and this strict encoding. And the idea is that basically it's not like you're already thinking about stuff like RGB node, LNP node, future BP node, or for instance, we have in the MyCitadel wallet, we have MyCitadel node, and there will be also a Storm node. You're thinking about that as a sort of monolithic software that this is RGB node and this is LNP node, and they are distant. No, they are not. Basically, each node is the collection of these small modules, these small daemons, let's say like that. It's not exactly daemons because they can run as a daemon or as a thread or as an independent server. It depends on the deployment. But it's a small modules, and the node actually is an assembly of certain subset of that modules. And the number of nodes is fixed. So there are several modules for RGB related to RGB, several modules related to Lightning Network, several modules related to Bifrost, several modules related to Storm, to Bitcoin protocol itself, to wallet protocol itself, like in MyCitadel doing the wallet required stuff, or to even the modules that are related to producing signatures and working with the private keys, which are really separate. And any kind of node is assembly of certain subportion of these small modules. And all of these modules are communicating with themselves, with each other through zero message queue and through this strict encoding. So they pack the data into strict encoding, send it to each other through this event-driving asynchronous APIs. And why we did it that way, why it is important, is because it allows you to pack the stuff into whatever you need. If you need to pack it into the mobile application, these modules will be threads inside this mobile application, inside a single monolithic process. And you can pack as many of them as you need. For instance, you may have a mobile wallet that have a full Bitcoin blockchain, the index of this Bitcoin blockchain, the Lightning node inside, the RGB inside with all the client-side validated data, and even private keys. You will require a high-end mobile phone to run that with a terabyte of the storage at least, but you can do that. Or you can have a tiny mobile application having nothing else than just connecting to the server side, RGB node, server side Lightning node, which is always online server side Bitcoin core, or any other Bitcoin blockchain provider which runs on your node at your home, nodal node, for instance, and so on and so forth. So you can pack that as the way you like to do that. And coming back to the integration topic, I can say that this is what we are producing as the end result of the development of RGB, LNP, BP, and the rest of stuff. And you have to integrate that into your wallet. And to do that integration, you have basically three options. Simple, not that simple, and very complex. So, sorry, I will jump through the slides because what are the parts that you need to talk to get RGB support into the wallet? At least if you are not doing the Lightning part yet, there are at least 3 main blocks. The first block is that you need to talk to the state of the Bitcoin network, which is blockchain index and basically Bitcoin core underlying that index. So you can talk to directly Bitcoin core, and then you need to run index by yourself in most of the cases, or you can use Electrum server as a proxy. Next, you need to talk to the RGB stuff, and the RGB stuff is also done in two layers. The first layer is the RGB client-side validated binary data we call stash, and on top of that, there is a logic that can interpret this binary data in terms of certain smart contract, like RGB20 smart contract, like a fungible asset or NFT or algorithmical stablecoin or other custom logic. And this contract logic has to talk also to Bitcoin blockchain index in parallel to the wallet. And the final thing is just a module that manages a private key, because to do the transaction both in Bitcoin and RGB, you have to produce a proper valid signature. So that is how the wallet, the blue part of the story, is structured. And these are things that you need to talk to in order to have the proper wallet. Without RGB, the wallets were already working like that. With RGB, you have this third component. And the other way we structure this, when we add a lightning part, is that your wallet basically made of 2 parts: the read-only wallet separated from any private keys, and the private key managing part, which can be a hardware external module or even some server that does part of a multi-sig, or it can be embedded right into your wallet internally. It's up to each wallet designer. It has to talk with a Bitcoin blockchain. It has to talk with RGB, and it has to talk with LNP, with Lightning part, to the Lightning part of the story. The problem is that, additionally to that, the RGB, when it works with Lightning, need to talk to each other. And the Lightning needs to talk to the Bitcoin part. And RGB part needs to talk to Bitcoin part. And you end up with all these complex things. And also the Lightning part needs to talk to the private keys to do the channel update. So you end up with this very complex story, which is shown here. And that's complexity as a wallet developer you have to manage to. And that's complexity we had failed with the initial integrations into the wallet software we had a year ago, and more than a year ago. And the wallet developers had a quite negative experience because of that. So jumping back to what I was going to say, we tried to address this problem in 2 ways. I'm trying to find the proper slide, sorry. Yeah, there are 2 ways of integrating RGB. The previous one, which I just described, is a complex one. So you stick in the RGB node and LNP node optionally into your wallet, and you do a custom RGB node integration. You will do a custom Lightning Network integration. You do a custom partially signed Bitcoin RGB integration. You do double, in fact, redundant Electrum Bitcoin core connectivity. You do custom data transfer API to transfer the RGB assets. You do a custom backup API to backup the client-side validated data. And even if you use Lightning, you will need to do a custom watchtowers. Very complex story. The simple story we are providing, like I clearly seen that this complex story wouldn't work for many of the people, so I decided that it's a business opportunity. So let's do all this integration by myself, because I know the internals and guts of all this stuff, and provide a Citadel, like a single point of integration, which we called a Citadel runtime and Citadel API to the wallet developers. It's not a part of the story we do at LNPBP Association. It's part of the story I'm doing at my company. But this part of the story is completely open source under MIT license. So basically nothing changes to the wallet developer. And your wallet has just a single way to integrate all of this complexity, which is managed internally as a single piece of data, which talks by itself to Bitcoin core, to hardware wallets, even able to deploy the Bitcoin core and Bitcoin blockchain in the private cloud, and so on and so forth. So these are 2 main ways of integration. And today, today? Well, we have both of these ways available because Citadel runtime is also working for the version 0.4 of RGB node we released last year, but it also will be updated to the new version of RGB we'll be doing. So it's up to you to decide which route you will follow after. The only point is that before the RGB release, I will have no time to support your integration because I need to focus on RGB release, and you will have to go through any of these ways by yourself. After that, with a complex way, the LNPBP association will not have a funding to support your activities. With a simple way, you will have to pay to Pandora Core company to explain how you do that as a commercial story. That's the basics of integration. And coming back to the question, how you can contribute to the integration part of the story. We will do the Citadel integrated runtime by ourselves. If you would like to contribute to that for free, you're welcome, but we will be making money out of that. Probably you wouldn't want to do that. And what you can do today is that because of this architecture that we followed, this modular architecture, everything done with a zero message queue and with a strict encoding, there are two basically ways. For the wallet developers, mobile wallet developers, it's quite simple. You either use Citadel runtime or you do integration by yourself. You will require CFFI and class libraries, which we will do at association anyway, so nothing changes to you. But if you do anything that is desktop-based or server-based, you have two options. The first option, you can do a direct communication with RGB node or LNP node through the zero message queue strict encoded API. And for that, you need to develop a language-specific libraries, which will allow you this API. Or we can do, as an alternative to that, a single gateway written, for instance, in Python or any other language that transfers this zero message queue encoded data with the strict encoding into more convenient format like protocol buffers, gRPC API, such that any existing application can use that API. So if you are specialist in any of these languages, and of course, especially in this one, you're welcome to share your ideas, what you would like to work on the first scenario or the second one. And you're welcome to do that such that you and other software developers will have the ways to integrate it into the software that you're using if you're more comfortable with the protobuf gRPC or JSON RPC. The JSON RPC is used by Bitcoin Core and others, but it's really not welcomed because of the low security of this thing. But again, if somebody needs to, I'm happy to support the development in that direction. So again, if you're willing to work on the integration of RGB, sorry, there it is, here on this part, you're welcome to join if you have a knowledge in non-Rust languages and have a knowledge of protobuf gRPC or JSON RPC API. And also you can write a strict encoding libraries in different languages for this first scenario, so either first or the second scenario. This is probably all on the wallet integration.
There was a
nice
question.
to have some questions. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a question. I'm not sure if it was answered already. Are there any plans for a daemon management utility for desktop or servers without needing the systemd?
Well, it depends how you define the daemon managed utility, because a systemd or without systemd. Yeah, you can with this setup, basically, for instance, let's take the most complex scenario. This all can be run as a single daemon, even on server or desktop. It's more like if you need a more complex deployment across the multiple servers, like for instance, we have in Pandora core to do the private clouds. You would like to run this daemon on one server, this daemon on another server, this daemon on some third server, or even a cluster of servers. Of course, you will need a more complex utility of that. But if you run all of that inside a single server, you just use a single daemon parameter. Or if you run it inside a mobile wallet, it's all run inside the single process. So you don't need any specific management for that. Did that answer the question?
Let me check. Hunter?
Yeah, so they can either be run as an embedded daemon or as like some kind of zero MQ strict encoding messaging bus. Like I know there's a microservices library that on the internet to organizations, basically, kind of like a pub sub, messaging bus, I guess. And
yeah.
would that? Yeah, and
so basically, why we have chosen this zero message queue is because you have three modes of operation. The first mode of operation is that everything is a single process, and you have multiple threads within that process, and these threads run in parallel with your mobile UI even. So you can run it on the mobile. And these threads, they communicate through the zero message queue in so-called in-process communications.
That
Basically,
makes sense.
it's shared memory. It's ARC, mutex, semaphore.
Yeah, I've seen that. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can run it in that way. So basically, it presents no problems to you, and you don't care about the zero message queue communication.
And so you would just embed the daemons into the binary, into a single process.
Yeah, it's just a single library you embed and a single function you call, and this function bootstraps all of them.
That's really cool.
Manages, yeah. The only thing you care about is this part in the interface, how UI talks to the backend, like not backend, but this complex thing, this complex library. And how we do that today is that we develop the class libraries in Swift and Java that actually abstracts that. You can just call the Swift or Java function. But we need more libraries in JavaScript for React.js or in Dart or Flutter. That's where we need contributions. Yeah.
Could so like ZeroMQ actually supports like a number of different transports in addition, like WebSockets and socks.
No. So zero message queue works over the shared memory, over inter-process communications POSIX. So you can have a local socket. It's only applied for the server environment.
Sure.
Or if you have a TCP connectivity, TCP AP.
Yeah, there's
on top of this TCP, you can't run it on WebSockets or HTTP. You can't run it.
Yeah, they have newer, like in some of the newer versions, they have like kind of a WebSocket functionality on over TCP. And they also and they also have socks as well. So like it's a very like kind of
you can use socks here. You can use socks, so it will work with a Tor or anything like that. But I'm afraid that the Rust version of the zero message queue, they don't have this new fashioned WebSockets thing yet.
Oh shoot! Okay, good to know.
So basically, if you need to use WebSockets, what I would recommend, I will try to remove all of that. Some space. We have more. Right, sorry. So what I would recommend to have a WebSocket is to have a server running all of that stuff in itself with all their message queue, and having the web client that have a WASM plugin or something, and this WASM plugin will talk through the RPC API using either the proto buff gRPC or JSON RPC, or if you have a WASM library for strict encoding, just strict encoding plus WebSocket.
And this sounds like an opportunity to kind of implement an API gateway between the two.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I put here the idea of having the gateway. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, this gateway. See this? I put this gateway here. So the idea is to do once a single gateway that can interface all the nodes and can provide with a protobuf gRPC over WebSockets, HTTP, and so on and so forth to the nodes that we have. And that's where the contributions are really, really welcome, because first, I don't have much experience in that area. And also I don't have time because I would like to focus on completing the RGB itself.
Yeah, it's just plumbing. But yeah, that's fantastic. I have a good amount of experience with that. Yeah, so that's a really elegant composable design. I really like that. Thank you, Maxim.
Thank you. Well, we lost a lot of time on doing this sort of design because we understood that later we wouldn't have time to do different solutions for web, desktop, mobile, and so on and so forth. So we try to find something that will be scalable across that. Thank you. So that is all that I had to say about the helping and contributing to RGB integration. The other part, I would like to focus on the RGB protocol contribution. It's more complex. Probably I would advise, if you are just new, to go this direction. But those who are already have experience with RGB protocols, we have 3 areas where your contribution will be really valued. If you have a strong Rust knowledge, you can directly contribute to RGB repositories. And I wouldn't spend time right now because I expect there will be very few of those who have this strong Rust knowledge. So we'll just talk directly, not distracting others for this thing. If you have a medium Rust knowledge, we really need to do a test coverage for existing RGB repositories. I will show on the next slide what are these repositories, but basically we need to do more tests. It's always welcome. So if you're not sure, probably it's best to start with the medium Rust skills to do a test coverage. If you don't know Rust, or your Rust knowledge is just initial, but you have certain cryptographic knowledge, we will welcome you to audit the existing code base. Basically download it, read through it, and ask the questions, do critiques, find something that looks strange for you. And that is basically, the more eyes look through the code, the better the code is, basically. It's as with the Bitcoin Core. And you can also, additional to that, help in writing and reviewing standards describing the RGB itself, because I will be showing here what we would like to end up. Oh, sorry, I'm moving the backwards. I need to move forward. What we would like to end up with the RGB is this stack. So at this moment, we are started with a core implementation, the reference, or just a single one implementation in certain language, right now it's a Rust, of the RGB itself. And from here, we are moving into 2 different directions. The bottom line direction is that we are writing attack guidelines, engineering guidelines, how people can do stuff. And we are standardizing the stuff that we've done as a standard, LNPBP as standard, where we explain not just how it works, but also explain goals, rationale, and the compatibility issues. Then we move from the standard to the notation thing, where we describe a specific semantics using certain syntax, which is more formal than the standard, which actually may be a part of the LNPBP standard, these 2 things. And from the notation, we, in some future, will move to formal math definition, which will be described as a form of scientific paper of how the RGB works. So right now we started here and we'll gradually move here after the release, of course. Well, we have many standards written already, but nothing written downwards that direction. And the second direction we are moving is that on top of the core implementation, we need to write a FFI, foreign function interface, to C language and WASM, on top of which we can have bindings and wrapper class libraries in JavaScript, Java, Dart, Python, and whatever other languages are. On top of which we will have a high-ended API for wallet developers. So these are two things, two directions, downwards and upwards. We can move with the RGB after it's released, but some thoughts like FFI and this can be done before the release. So that's where you can help, is basically, other than doing the integration part, the upper part, you can also help with the writing or reviewing the standards, or if you have a strong scientific computer science background, doing annotation or formal semantics for the parts of RGB. Regarding the reviewing the code and writing the test coverage for that, where the code is. We have this list of repositories. Don't bother about this one. It's a future. Don't spend time on that. The first one is the Rust Bitcoin, where it's nothing RGB specific. It's a Rust Bitcoin community created by Andrew Palastra, where the taproot implementation was done, PSBT is done, and so on and so forth. So it's more generic Rust Bitcoin stuff, more generic Bitcoin stuff, so not RGB specific. The first RGB specific thing starts here with standards and client-side validation, Bitcoin protocol and LNP protocol. Again, they are not exactly RGB specific, but they are underlying foundation for RGB. And in this organization, you will find them. Single-use seals are there, Bitcoin deterministic commitments, data contract commitments, sign to contract commitments once we will do them there, Bifrost protocol, generalized Lightning network, Lightning messaging, all of that is there, which is not Bitcoin specific, which is not RGB specific, and probably will be used and sometimes already used in other non-RGB stuff. Everything that is just about RGB is an RGB org, where you will find the RGB core, RGB node, initial development on the constructum language, and the rest. And finally, there are also another general thing, which is not exactly RGB specific and even not Bitcoin specific. It's more about networking and virtual machines. You will find the Alluvium there in the internet.org, and Bolt 8 basing networking, the Sphinx packets and all that stuff, which is not just LNPBP event specific. So these are the places where you can have repositories that you can review and audit. And related this specific RGB stuff, the structure of repositories is the following. Sorry, not only RGB, but also this and this. The structure of repositories is the following. So we have the common Rust Bitcoin stuff, which includes Bitcoin and Miniscript. On top of that, we are doing RGB non-specific things which are under the umbrella of client-side validation. We have the client-side validation libraries, including single-use seals, commitment schemes, and strict encoding. The repository called client-side validation. Inside this repository, there are 3 Rust CRTs, which are named here: single-use seals, commit, validate, and strict encoding. So if you would like to read into strict encoding, you have to go into this repository in LNPBP org, and inside that you need to go into the directory of strict encoding. In parallel to that, we have a descriptor wallet library, which is based on top of all Bitcoin stuff. And here we have extensions to partially assigned Bitcoin formats, more advanced descriptors, hardened derivations, hierarchical derivation of Bitcoin wallets, on-chain part, and advanced Bitcoin scripting. So it's extension to Bitcoin protocol itself, not just RGB related, but just everything that is required to have a richer experience of Bitcoin and Miniscript. On top of these two, we have an implementation of client-side validation inside Bitcoin protocol, which includes Bitcoin UTXO-based single-use seals and deterministic Bitcoin commitments with a pay-to-contract scheme in the future, potentially signed to contract. And when we took this Bitcoin-based client-side validation with Alluvium, we finally get to the RGB core library, which is the library that implements 100% of RGB business logic. So that's one you have to look to. RGB node, unlike RGB core, does nothing that is RGB specific. So it's not consensus critical. It's just a node, a software that uses RGB code and these microservices to store the data locally, to do the networking interfaces, to do all this additional stuff to make RGB working. And the microservices residing in the, you see the color encoding here is also blue one things. These are blue here. The red thing is red here, and so on. So this microservices is the library inside Internet 2 repository that allows this zero message queue and the rest of the story that I was describing on this slide. So please review, do a test coverage, criticize these parts. So that's another thing that you can contribute into. So basically, I think I have several slides about the wallet, but I think we need a dedicated presentation about integrating RGB and Lightning into the wallet. The best way to do that, because there are many event-driven models and other things to consider coming from our experience of doing my Citadel wallet. And we don't have time to that for today. So what else I have left? And also there is a very important topic about decentralizing RGB, but we are more than an hour. And I think I will move these slides to the next presentation.
We're now almost 2 hours, so maybe we use the last 8 minutes for the Q&A
to cover questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Maxim, for the presentation. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to speak up or send them to the chat.
I mean, the chat right now is officially dedicated to memes about learning Rust before contributing to the RGB, but it can also be used for other things.
Yeah, you haven't checked the Telegram group of ours, because the Telegram chat already has like 10 memes or something.
Yeah. No, sorry, I was referring to that. Yeah.
I forgot to add that the first way to contribute to RGB is to create memes.
Exactly.
Yeah, you do not need to know Rust for that. That's for sure. Bye, Polto. Thank you for joining. Okay, so guys, if you have any questions, feel free. Mic drop. Do it.
Probably it was too complicated. I thought that it would be much simpler than other presentations.
You have been using this as a technology for the past 3 years. It doesn't work like that.
Well, yeah, on my side, I mean, it's quite clear the overall topics that you cover. I will just maybe take some time to look more specifically into the code and everything to come up with more specific questions later on.
Well, my goal was at least to do that on record, such that people can listen to it later in the specific topics they're interested into and have this downloading of all the information.
Well, it's been a while, so basically I think this is a very still comprehensive, I want to say, presentation of ours, because people kind of lost track on what was going on, what is going on, and we had a long pause. So I think right now it's a good thing to have something like this online.
Yeah, sure. It's a good presentation to point also new contributors to as a starting point.
Thank you for listening through it.
Thank you for preparing it.
Thank you, Maxim.
you,
Bye,
Maxim.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you,
Giacomo.
Giacomo, for joining us.
There is one question though in the chat. We tried to derive from the seed phrase the Bitcoin addresses from the descriptor wallet, but we couldn't find which derivation path was used. So the question is how to calculate the correct descriptor wallet addresses based on the seed.
Well, basically there is no way, because the seed is not specific to any derivation address. And with the descriptor wallet, it is structured in a way that first you create the seed, which is not related to any wallet at all. You store the seed with a password. And then you still use the hot wallet, BTC hot, to derive a specific account, or a specific, basically, yeah, it's proper to name it account, a specific account under that seed. So that's the second thing you need to do, is to call BTC hot derive, and there you provide a derivation path via the -s option. If you type in the BTC hot space derive space --help, you will see the options there, and you will see that with the -s option, you can provide different types of derivation path, starting with the derivation path based on certain BIPs, up to a completely custom derivation path. And once you do this extended private key thing with this derivation thing, you can use this private key or others in combination with other private keys to do an actual wallet, because the wallet is the wallet descriptor that can be based on a single private key or multiple private keys, because you can have a multisig for that. And to do a wallet descriptor, you're already using a cold wallet, and you use XPubs, which are provided to you when you derived a specific derivation path from your seed with a BTC hot wallet. If you need more information, you need to look into the Bitcoin, into the descriptor wallet presentation, which we had also before the new year, maybe in November, where I was explaining what is the difference between this wallet descriptor, account, seed phrase, input descriptor, and the rest of the stuff that is related to descriptor wallet story.
Kaspar, did we answer your question? Okay. Anything else, guys? Okay. So the recordings would be up online in some time. I hope to make it as soon as possible. We'll have the presentation slides, we'll have the audio recording, we will have the video recording too. So the meetings we have, so the regular, in the peaceful times, the regular meetings were bi-weekly, which means that the next one would be in 2 weeks from now, on Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Central European time. That's the regular time of our calls. If anything happens, I usually put some heads up or something. So it's every 2 weeks. I inform everyone in the Telegram chat. Yeah. So regarding the current call, everything would be uploaded online as soon as I can. Yep. So do we have, there's a question. Do we have a list of issues for unit testing? Maxim, do you have something like that?
Yes, I think we have, well, basically in any repositories that I listed today. You remember the slide? Let me just bring it back. Just a second, I will share my screen. sharing broadcast. You see it. If I go to the, you see these 3 repositories in color, not repositories, GitHub organizations, LNPBP, RGB.org, and Internet2.org. And within that repositories, within that organization, GitHub organization, you will find these repositories listed here in color: descriptor wallet, client-side validation, BP core, RGB node, Alluvium, microservices, encoded with the same color as here, the organizations. And there, in any of these repositories, you can go into issues section. In each of them, there is a lot of issues. Well, maybe some of them have like less than 10, some of them have more than 50 issues. It depends on the repository. And there are, of course, all the issues that are good for new contributors are marked with a good first time issue or something like that.
Good first issue, yeah.
Yeah. And test related issues are marked with the tests. But for tests, you don't need actually issues. You just go into the code and just start writing the test for the part of the code you'd like to write. Okay. It literally doesn't make sense to do issues for test coverage, because basically it will be just an issue. Do the test coverage whatever you like. So it's any tests are welcome. But if you are not looking into the doing test part, but looking to something else, you basically go into a specific repository. These are repositories which are required for RGB release. There are much more repositories, so you can go into other ones, but they will not be critical to RGB release and will not move forward the date of the RGB release. So these repositories on these slides are those who can help to move forward to the RGB release. And when you see the issues, you can just address those issues which will find there in those repositories.
Awesome.